Hey, Politigals, welcome back to Based Behavior, the podcast for conservative women who think critically and speak boldly. If you're new here, this is your weekly dose of common sense in a world that's completely lost it. We've got a packed episode today. First, we're breaking down the Democrat caused government shutdown, what's actually at stake, how much it's costing American families every single day, and why the media is trying so hard to blame gridlock instead of the party actually holding the economy hostage. Then we're diving into a sentencing that should make every American furious. The man who tried to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh just got one of the most lenient punishments imaginable. And of course, there's a political reason behind it. Then finally, we're talking about Elon Musk taking on Netflix and why parents everywhere are finally saying enough is enough. It's going to be a big episode, so settle in and let's get into it. Let's start with what's probably the biggest story in the country right now, the government shutdown. And as of recording this episode, the federal government is still shut down and Democrats are holding it hostage. Here's what that actually means. Every single day that this shutdown drags on, American families are paying the price. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that each week of a shutdown costs the U.S. economy roughly $1.5 billion in lost output. That is businesses stalled, paychecks delayed, and families wondering when Washington is finally going to get its act together. But this isn't just about abstract numbers or some partisan gridlock like the media keeps calling it. This is about priorities. And the Democrats just made theirs crystal clear. They shut down the government because they want to jam through $1.5 trillion in new spending, and nearly 200 billion of that goes to healthcare for illegal immigrants. You heard that right, not for veterans, not for moms or for struggling families, for people who broke our laws to come here. Meanwhile, programs that do help American families like WIC, the Women, Infants and Children's Program, they're running out of funding. That is millions of low-income mothers and babies who are at risk of losing access to formula, baby food, and basic nutritional support. And it's all because Democrats would rather protect illegal aliens than protect American kids. It's insanity. Now let's rewind for a second because I think it's important to understand how we even got here. Government shutdowns happen when Congress can't agree on how to fund the government. We've talked about that last week. But since 1976, it's actually happened 22 times. Most of the time, it only lasts a few days, or a couple have lasted a few weeks. The record holder, however, was back in 2018-2019. It was the one where Democrats refused to fund Trump's border wall. That shutdown lasted 35 days. It was the longest in US history. And if that sounds familiar, it's because we're watching the sequel play out right now. At the time, it was Trump asking for $5 billion to secure the border. And now Democrats are demanding $1.5 trillion to blow open the budget and bankroll healthcare for illegal immigrants. Do you see the difference there? When Republicans tried to protect the border, Democrats called it cruel. But when Democrats shut down the government to protect illegal immigrants, they call it standing firm. It's the same double standard every single time. And here's where it gets personal, because during a shutdown, federal workers get furloughed, small business loans are delayed, families waiting on tax refunds or childcare assistance get stuck in limbo, military families see pay delays. But you know who doesn't feel it? The politicians causing it. Their checks still clear, their pensions still grow. So when you hear Democrats go on TV talking about how this shutdown is about compassion, just remember they're not the ones missing paychecks. They're not the ones at the grocery store wondering how to stretch another week's worth of meals for their kids. This isn't about compassion, it is cruelty disguised as virtue. And let's talk about that $200 billion for illegal immigrant healthcare. That is more than the entire annual budget for the Department of Homeland Security. It's more than we spend on the entire WIC program, Head Start, and the Children's Health Insurance Program combined. Imagine if that money actually went towards American families, like maternity care or child nutrition, supporting working moms. But no, Democrats would rather virtue signal at the border than actually feed American kids. And they think that you won't notice. They think that you'll just tune it out and see shutdown on the news and assume that both sides are to blame. But that's not true this time. Republicans passed a responsible funding bill that kept the government open without all of the extra junk. Democrats tanked it because it didn't include their wish list of reckless spending. They shut it down on purpose, and now every day they refuse to negotiate, it costs you. The economy bleeds, families suffer, and Washington keeps playing politics. So, as moms, as taxpayers, as people who actually feel the effects of this stuff, we have every right to be furious. Every week, billions of dollars vanish in lost productivity because the party that claims to care about working families is too busy catering to activists and illegals. That's not governance, that is betrayal. Let me know in the comments, how long do you think that this government shutdown will last? And do you think that Republicans should cave or continue to stand firm and make Democrats own the damage that they've caused? All right, before we move into our next story, let's pause for a second so I can give a quick personal life update because I did something very random and fun this past week. I was an extra in a movie. I randomly found out that a Hallmark movie, not one of their Christmas movies, just one of the normal ones, was being filmed in my small town and they needed extras. So I filled out this Google form online saying that I was available and was absolutely shocked to get an email inviting me to the set. The scene that I was in was this like office setting, and essentially I just walked behind the main actors while they were talking so that the office looked busy and normal. If my scene does make the cut, I will be on screen for like 3 seconds total, but it was still a really fun experience and it was so cool to be able to watch like behind the camera as the main actors were doing their main scene. That's never an experience I thought that I would get to participate in, but I'm really glad that I did. All right, next we need to talk about something that every single American should be furious about because this isn't just a story about crime, it's about justice and what happens when the people in power stop taking political violence seriously. So the man who tried to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, a 28-year-old from California named Nicholas Roski, who now identifies as a transgender woman, was sentenced to just 8 years in prison. 8 years. Let's back up for a second and remember what actually happened. In June of 2022, right after that draft Supreme Court opinion leaked showing that Roe versus Wade would be overturned, Roski packed a suitcase with a Glock 17 handgun, 2 magazines of ammo, zip ties, duct tape, a hammer, pepper spray, and then like burglary tools. He then took a cab to Justice Kavanaugh's home in Maryland, the actual home where Kavanaugh lives with his wife and 2 daughters. And he said that the plan was simple and it was horrifying. He wanted to break in, kill Kavanaugh, and then kill himself. He told investigators that he wanted to give his life meaning and help Democrats maintain control of the Supreme Court. He literally said that. This was not a random act of violence. It was an ideologically motivated assassination attempt against one of the highest officials in the country. He made it all the way to Kavanaugh's neighborhood before losing his nerve when he saw like U.S. Marshals guarding the house, and then he called 911 on himself and admitted his whole plan and turned himself in. The only reason that Brett Kavanaugh and his family are still alive today is because he lost his nerve. Now, fast forward to now, Roski pleaded guilty earlier this year, and prosecutors asked for a 30-year sentence. They said it was deliberate and planned and politically motivated, and that the entire judicial system depends on protecting judges from threats like this. But the judge overseeing the case, Deborah Boardman, a Biden appointee, of course, completely disagreed. She called the plot reprehensible, but then decided that 8 years was enough. She cited his mental health struggles, his lack of prior criminal history, his remorse, and then the fact that he didn't actually go through with it. So now a man who flew across the country to murder a Supreme Court justice gets less than a decade behind bars. Let's be honest, if this had been a conservative trying to assassinate a liberal justice, we would still be talking about it. It would have been the biggest story in America. The media would have called it domestic terrorism. Politicians would have blamed blamed Trump supporters and then demanded new laws targeting right wing extremism. But because the target was Brett Kavanaugh, a conservative pro life justice, and the attacker identifies as transgender, the story is softened. It's hard to not see the double standard here. Okay, the same Justice Department that threw the book at grandmas who walked into the Capitol building on January 6th is suddenly handing out compassion to a man who traveled across the country with a gun to kill a Supreme Court justice. That is not equality under the law. What's worse is the message that this sends, that political violence is acceptable as long as it's directed at conservatives, that if you say the right words and you use the right pronouns and claim mental health struggles, you will be treated like a victim even when you're the one holding the gun. That is what a two-tiered justice system looks like. And I can't help but think about this as a mom for a second. Brett Kavanaugh's daughters were asleep in their bed that night. A man, now identifying as a woman, was outside of their house with a loaded weapon, zip ties, and duct tape. If not for a last-minute phone call, that family could have been slaughtered. And our system just told them that their lives were worth 8 years in prison. There is no world where an attempted political assassination should result in an 8-year sentence. None. This was not a petty crime. This was an attack on the judiciary itself, one of the pillars of our democracy. And yet the same crowd that lectures us about protecting democracy doesn't seem to care when it's their own side doing the attacking. So let me just say it plainly. If you show up at a Supreme Court justice's home with a gun, zip ties, and a plan to kill him, I don't care what your pronouns are, or what state you flew in from, or what mental health diagnosis you're claiming, you should never walk free again. Because until we start treating violence against conservatives with the same seriousness that we treat violence against the left, justice will never mean what it's supposed to. Let me know in the comments, do you think that 8 years was enough for an attempted assassination of a Supreme Court justice? Because I think this case tells us everything that we need to know about how broken our system has become. All right, let's talk about the latest front in the culture war, because this one isn't just about one show. It's about what your kids are watching, who's shaping it, and who's finally fighting back. Elon Musk has officially declared war on Netflix. He is calling for people to completely cancel their subscriptions and accusing the streaming giant of pushing trans ideology into children's programming. Clips have been circulating online from multiple Netflix kids shows like Dead End and Strawberry Shortcake, The Babysitter's Club, even Coco Melon, all featuring gender or sexuality-based storylines targeted at children. And Musk is not holding back. He has reposted clips, shared memes, and straight up said, cancel Netflix for the health of your kids. In one post, he compared Netflix to a Trojan horse, a seemingly innocent kids platform smuggling in activist messaging. And after watching some of the clips myself, I understand why parents are so angry.
It's not the park. It's me. I'm trans, Norma. And everyone at school knows, and everyone at home knows. And being here, it's like a whole new place. I can just be Barney, and I can choose if and when I tell people. I've never been happier.
I mean, you've got male cartoon characters suddenly identifying as girls and coming out scenes in shows designed for elementary-aged kids, and reoccurring messages about finding your true gender. These aren't blink and you miss it moments. They are baked into the storylines intentionally. And before someone says, oh, it's just one episode, that is the point. It is not one episode anymore. It is everywhere. Think about what this does over time. The average child spends more than 2 hours a day watching streaming content. The companies that control what kids watch control what kids learn, what they normalize, and eventually what they believe. And the left has known that for years. That's why they've turned Hollywood into a pipeline for activism. They know most parents aren't sitting down and screening every episode that their kids watch. They know if they make the characters cute and colorful and catchy, they can slip in whatever message they want, and your 6-year-old will just absorb it. Meanwhile, conservatives have spent years saying just turn it off. But here's the problem: we shouldn't have to. Parents shouldn't have to live on defense 24/7, hunting down which streaming platform has the least indoctrination baked into its cartoons. Musk is saying what a lot of parents have been thinking: enough is enough. And of course, the backlash was instant. Liberal outlets called him anti LGBTQ, and activists have accused him of putting trans kids in danger. But notice something: none of them are actually denying that this is happening. They just reframe the outrage as hate. And this isn't about hate, it's about boundaries. It's about saying that there is a difference between teaching kids to be kind and teaching kids to question their biology. Those are not the same thing. And let's talk about Netflix for a second. This is the same company that had no problem airing Cuties, a movie sexualizing preteens, and now they want to lecture parents on morality. I completely get why Musk's campaign is resonating, because this isn't just about Netflix anymore, it's about this broader fight over who controls culture. The left lost control of Twitter when Musk bought it, and now X is open to different viewpoints. They lost control of TikTok trends because conservative creators have figured out how to beat the algorithm. And now the streaming world is the last fortress that they're holding on to. But if enough people start speaking up and walking away, that fortress will fall too. So whether or not you agree with Musk on everything, here is something that is undeniable. He is doing what most parents wish they could. He is using his platform to push back. He's saying what a lot of moms and dads are too afraid to say out loud: that our kids are not your social experiment. And I'll tell you what's coming next. Netflix is going to try to downplay this. They're going to say that it's overblown. They'll quietly rebrand or shift certain shows off of the kids' homepage. But make no mistake, they are feeling it. Because when people start turning off the streaming services, that's when real change happens. Let me know in the comments, do you think Elon's right to call out Netflix? And have you canceled your subscription over this? Next, we're going to talk about our base babe of the week, and here is a quick content warning. If you roll your eyes in a minute once I start this segment, that is okay. I will not be offended. This entire story takes less than a minute, so you can just fast forward and skip ahead. All right, I know I'm going to get some backlash for this, but this week's base babe of the week is Taylor Swift. Now, I'm not saying Taylor has all of a sudden come out as conservative or that she's endorsed JD Vance for 2028 or something, but she did just release a new album that is giving a lot of based and conservative undertones. One entire song on the album, called Wishlist, is essentially her just saying, all of my friends, all of the people around me dream of epic parties and winning awards and designer clothing, but all I want in life right now is to be married and to have kids. That is literally the American dream. And the craziest part is that her liberal fan base is not having any of it. They are quite literally freaking out over the fact that their girl boss goddess is sounding more and more like a trad wife. And yes, okay, there are still curse words in some of her songs and some questionable comparisons. If you've listened, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that she's decided to become a nun or anything, but I do think it's worth celebrating that the biggest pop icon in the world is vocally celebrating traditional values in the pursuit of marriage and motherhood. So because of that, Taylor Swift is officially our base babe of the week. All right, that's going to do it for this week's Base Behavior. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the thumbs up, leave a comment with your thoughts on one of today's stories, and subscribe so that you don't miss next week's episode. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit that follow button and drop a 5-star review. It only takes a few seconds, but it honestly makes a huge difference in growing this show. And don't forget that you can follow Base Behavior on Instagram and TikTok for daily clips and hot takes. You can also join the Politicals Facebook group if you want to be a part of the conversation happening between episodes. I'm Erica Choinka from Politics for Her. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week for more Base Behavior.